All right, Alexander, we have Boris Johnson in the Parliament speaking to the people of the UK, and he basically said it's over. No more masks, no more mandates, no more lockdowns, no more Plan B, no more digital IDs. It is all done. People can get back on with life. Trust the people, Boris said. Trust the people. Trust the science is gone. Now it's trust the people. And, the talk is that obviously this was a political calculation. No doubt about that. He had his back against the wall, and he took, I think, the one option that was left to him, which was to get rid of all of this stuff. Will it work? That's the next question. It was a political calculation. I mean, personally, we take the wins that we were given, and I always say that this could reverse, and mandates and lockdowns and digital IDs could come back into force in a week or 2 or 3 months, whatever. I don't know. I can't predict the future there, but we take the win that's given to us, and this was a big one because the whole world, saw Boris there basically telling everybody it's over. All of this stuff that we've gone through the past 2 years is done, and that's significant for the Prime Minister of the UK to get on stage and say that. Coincidentally, it was, Boris made these announcements just before Biden was about to give his big presser as well. So very, very big news, huge news coming out of the UK. But will it hold? Will Boris hold? That's, right. I think, the next big question.
Now, indeed, absolutely. Now, can I first of all make 2 quick observations? Firstly, the thing about Boris is that Boris has many, many flaws. He's a poor manager. He's lazy. He's self-indulgent. He's tolerant of corruption in others. He's, somebody who perhaps isn't really very good at many of the key tasks as Prime Minister. But he does have one quality which distinguishes him from every other member of the political class in Westminster, which is he has the ability to think outside the box. We saw that in 2019 when the whole Brexit situation seemed to be frozen. And he had this meeting with Macron in New York, and they came together with a deal. It was a deal in which Boris appeared to, basically betray the Northern Irish, but it enabled him to get an election and to get Brexit done. And nobody else would have had that suppleness and ability to think on his feet that Boris did, and to pull something off like that. And essentially, yesterday, the day before we make this video, the day which was supposed to be high noon, the day when his premiership was, almost certain to unravel, when the plotters were manoeuvring to knock him out, he did the same thing. Now, one of the things he did, and this is not to be underestimated, was what you've just said. And obviously that did rally support to him from the libertarian right of the party, where he had lost a lot of support recently. I'm also going to say something that my own view is that this is irreversible. Boris stays or Boris leaves. It is inconceivable that any incoming Prime Minister will reverse this. So Boris did this. He did this for, I suspect, reasons of political survival. But now that it's been done, there is no going back. And I think that that's an essential point to understand. It is one of the big moves that he made, as big in some ways as the moves that he made in 2019. And just as whatever you think about Boris, it did result in Brexit happening. This move that he's just made, whatever you think of Boris and whatever Boris himself does and whatever happens to Boris, this also, like Brexit, will stay. So I think this is a big, big move. And as an example, again, of Boris thinking again out of the box, and it's one that's irreversible. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that, of course, the media has barely noticed this because their focus has been on the battle in the parliamentary chamber. And here again, it was interesting to see the dynamic at play, because Boris is always at his best at these moments. His back is against the wall. He's able to sort of rally support. He spoke to MPs, Conservative MPs beforehand. And I have to say, yet again, he came over as a much more creative politician than Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer approached this in a very forensic way, which I don't think really carried any force. What he could have said, for example, is that Boris is coming up with this extraordinary claim that he didn't understand the rules and that there was a mistake on his part. Well, Keir Starmer could have come along and said, well, Boris is the person who told the nation what the rules were. He actually went on television and told the nation what the rules were. So how can he claim that he didn't understand them? Now, that's something that would have cut through. But instead, in his usual forensic, boring way, you got Starmer coming up with all sorts of points, many of them very good points, in a court of law. But the House of Commons is not a law court. He's not addressing a judge. And the result was he didn't come across effectively. And he didn't come across well. And then the other thing that Starmer did, and it's taken straight out of the Blairite, copybook. Blair in the 90s was extremely effective at talking behind the scenes to Conservative MPs and getting them to defect to the Labour Party. And Starmer has been doing the same thing. He's been talking to various Conservative MPs in these red wall seats, and he managed to persuade one of them to defect, and he timed the defection for this debate in the House of Commons, obviously with the intention that it would show that the Conservative Party was disintegrating. And in my opinion, that was spectacularly ill-judged, because what it did was that it caused the rest of the Conservative Party, seeing one of their number desert them, it caused them to unite and unite behind Boris. So it was a clever move in terms of Blair's tactics in the 90s, which Starmer is trying to copy. It was a clever move, which actually backfired and ended up helping Boris instead. So you can see this combination of Boris having the ability to pull rabbits out of the hat, think on his feet, do things when he's under real pressure, and you get the contrast with Starmer still trying to do the kind of things that worked for Blair in the 90s, whilst lacking Blair's flair. Blair did have a kind of flair, and he doesn't have that. And as a result, this what all should have been an easy win, it slipped out of his hands. And Boris is still there, and he survived another week. Now, it's not by any means certain that Boris is still is through the woods here. And it's important to say that it all now hinges on a report that Sue Gray, who's a civil servant, is apparently going to publish in a week's time, about whether there was any misconduct or anything, seriously wrong or dishonest about those parties. Any prime minister who puts his fate in the hands of a civil servant is in trouble. Any Brexit prime minister who puts his political life in the hands of what is almost certainly a Remainer civil servant is in severe political trouble. But of course, it may very well be also that Sue Gray is worried about antagonising the Conservative Party, the right of the Conservative Party, and that may make her nervous. Anyway, we will see what she comes up with. But he survived this attempted coup yesterday, when he shouldn't have done, objectively, partly because of his own boldness and his own capacity to think outside the box, but also because Starmer, his political opponent, simply doesn't know how to deal with these kind of situations, and frankly is a mediocrity who isn't up to his job.
Yeah, Starmer's terrible. And even the people that are looking to replace Boris are just not impressive at all. I will say this. I'll be fair to Boris. I thought it was a great speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I thought he really delivered. He needed to deliver.
Yeah.
And he delivered. On the world stage, he delivered. He spoke well. It was inspirational. He got a round of applause. He didn't seem scared. He didn't seem shaken. No. He seemed in control. They needed him to deliver. Yes. And he really did deliver. So you have to give him credit for that. The optics of it, too, were very well done. He was... obviously, he needed to step up to the plate, and he did step up, and he came through. Given that everyone is so mediocre around him, whether it's the Conservatives or whether it's the Labour, I mean, even if he is in trouble next week with this report, I imagine people in the UK understand that, you know what? Boris Johnson is giving us what we asked. He's listening to the people, finally. We finally have someone that's actually listening to us. Why would we want to get rid of him with all his flaws and with the fact that he broke his own rules? Yes, he broke his own rules. He's done many stupid things. It wasn't the first. It won't be the last. But at least he's giving us what we want with Brexit, and now he's giving us what we want with trying to get back to some sort of normal life and getting past all of the silliness over the last 2 years. So why would the people have an appetite to see some sort of replacement to Boris?
Well, I mean, the country is profoundly divided, and it's always important to remember that 49% of people voted Remain, and they detest Boris. So, I mean, he's got a lot of opponents across Britain, and it's not by any means the united, he doesn't have a united public behind him. But, of course, what he did do is that he's rallied a lot of the support that he was losing. And I agree, by the way. I mean, again, the contrast, it wasn't just a good speech, but it's important to say it was a good speech when it was needed. And it was a good speech, a particularly good speech, in contrast to, as I said, Starmer's, I thought, frankly, flat performance. So it worked for Boris, and it worked very well. He's good at this sort of thing. And at the moment, he's concerned that this is always the important thing to understand about British politics and indeed Conservative politics. It's not necessarily what opinion in the country is at the moment that really matters. It's what opinion amongst Conservative MPs is at the moment, because they are the people who will make or break Boris's career. And it's they who are in the chamber, they who saw Boris speak in the way that he did, they who saw, as I said, this disastrous misstep that, I think it was a disastrous misstep that Starmer did, arranging this defection. I thought at the time, by the way, the moment I heard about it, I said, this is a big mistake. This isn't going to do what Starmer thinks. He's thinking back to the kind of things Blair did in the 90s, which worked then in a very different situation. This time, they're not going to work. But anyway, so the Conservative MPs will see that, and they will see a Prime Minister who has not run out of ideas and who's able to make big moves. Now, it's possible that enough of them will get together and they will say, look, Boris is Boris. He bungled and botched things with these parties. We don't know what Sue Gray's going to say. But provided she doesn't say that he was culpably dishonest, the chances are he'll pull through.
And we just go back to the last video that we did too. It's that when you look at all the options across the board, you sit there, you sit back and you say, well, especially looking at the speech he gave yesterday, you sit there and you say, okay, well, for all the stupid things he's done and everything that's happened, he has, during crunch time, he has delivered. During crunch time, when you need him to deliver, he does kind of deliver. It may not be perfect, but he comes through,
Yeah, I think there was one thing for me which showed that when this whole debate started, that Boris was in a much stronger position than appeared at one point. It appeared at one point might be the case, which is that Rishi Sunak, who, remember, has been incredibly silent, very unwilling to support Boris, who has been hovering in the wings, appeared in the chamber and sat next to Boris. Now, I think the reason he did that, which is a way of showing his support for Boris, I think the reason he did that was that he too was rattled by this defection. And he didn't want to seem that he was supporting the actions of a traitor to the party. So you can see how the whole of the party stiffened and consolidated around Boris. And of course, he gave them reason to feel with his decisions that he's still in control, that he's still able to make the decisions, make the big popular moves, connect to the country, lead them to victory in elections in a way that no one else can. And for Conservative MPs, ultimately, that's what matters.
All right. So a final question is that, you mentioned that the statements Boris made during that speech, they're going to stick even if he is replaced.
Yes.
Even if he is replaced, it's going to be very difficult for someone, a Sunak, a Grove, a Trust, to come in and say, oh, you know what, whatever Boris said, forget about it. I'm reversing back to Plan B and digital IDs and all that. That's going to be, political suicide if someone does do that.
Yes.
So, I mean, Boris took a huge move. Is it safe to say that Boris did something that no Western leader has the guts to do at this moment in time? I mean, is that an overstatement? Because that speech on the world stage was pretty ballsy, for lack of a better word. I haven't seen anyone really come up to the world stage and say, I'm putting my foot down. It's over. This is what we're going to be doing going forward.
Well, Boris,
I mean, he really threw the gauntlet down, is what I want to say. He threw the gauntlet down.
Boris is a unique personality. But bear in mind that he did that because his back was to the wall. I mean, he did it because he was in a desperate position.
But he still did it.
But he did it, exactly. Others, of course, have not yet done it. But my own personal view is that eventually, inevitably, unavoidably now, it's going to spread. The example is going to spread, and people around the world are going to start doing what he has done, because where Britain leads on this, everybody's going to follow, realistically.
You think this is a watershed?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been feeling for a long time that ever since this new variant appeared, I'm not going to mention its name, that there's been a major change in popular sentiment. Up to now, people have been prepared to do much of what they were asked to do. But when they were told, well, we've now got this new variant and we must go back to doing all those things all over again, they said enough. And I think Boris is attuned enough to sentiment, to popular sentiment, to understand that. And in this respect, because he was up against the wall, he did what he did. And of course, he's ahead of the pack in that respect. But this example this time will be very catching. I can't imagine anybody else, any other world leader, holding out against this for very much longer.
I have a final question. You may not
Bad
be able
news
to answer
for
it. Do you think
bad news for a certain person in the White House, by the way.
Yes,
but that's another.
Bad news for Biden. Bad news for Trudeau. Bad news for Morrison. Bad news for a lot of countries that are still going along with the plan and are connected to the UK through history and through system.
I know. But remember that Biden.
Do you think Boris understands?
But Biden was elected on a particular program.
Yes.
And this is going to be very difficult for him. Carry on.
Mm-hmm. My question is just quickly, do you think Boris is aware of what he did? I mean, do you think his team said, okay, Boris, this is the only option we have left now in order to save your prime ministership? And Boris said, yeah, if I do make these statements and I do read this speech, everyone in the room, we understand the gravity, the effect that this will have on the world. I mean, this is a world-changing type of declaration that I'm making, even though he did it to save his political future. Do you think it was not lost on him that this is going to change, where we are in this moment in time with regards to the narrative we've been going through for the past 2 years? I mean, this is a watershed moment.
Absolutely. I'm
Did,
sure
did he understand that? Did he grasp that?
I'm sure he understands it. Obviously, as you correctly said, I mean, 9/10 of it is he's saving his own political career. I mean, that's indisputable, and that for Boris is always the overriding priority. I mean, everything else is entirely secondary. But he knows perfectly well what the effect is going to be of what he's done. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. And this is where I come back to the fact that he is this instinctual politician, much more than, as I said, the people in Westminster who are basically live inside the Westminster bubble. He has a feeling for what people are saying across the country. He understands that exasperation has now spilt over. And this is, I think he sees even beyond the opinion polls, which are already, by the way, trending in that direction. So he knows that. He's very, very skilled at surfing the wave, if I can put it like this. And not just surfing the wave, but perhaps taking that wave that bit further and moving it forward faster than it might otherwise have done. He did that with Brexit. He understood that the move in politics was, the move in public opinion was heading towards Brexit. He understood that at a time when most political commentators, when the political class was sure it would be otherwise. They all expected that Remain was going to win and win by a big margin. But Boris ignored what the opinion polls said. He had his finger on the pulse. He understood that it would be otherwise. Now, I don't think he was particularly at that time, concerned about Brexit, as opposed to, he famously did two different documents, one pro-Remain, one pro-Leave. But the point with Boris was that he knew which side was going to win, and he made sure that he would be on that side, and no other part of the political class understood that. And by joining the Leave campaign, he played a key role in ensuring that he actually won, because he has that ability to articulate feelings in a way that people across the country listen to and understand, which no other politician in Westminster does. And he's done exactly the same with the pandemic situation. He understood before everybody else in politics that people have now reached their limit, that they're not prepared to take any more. And he's adjusted to that fact. And he's going to reap the reward, just as he did with Brexit. At least that's what he expects, and I'm sure he's right.
Yeah, big news. Wow, incredible event. Incredible event. All right, we will, Boris, you got to hand it to him. We will leave it there. Everybody, the Duran.locals.com, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rumble, and Super You. You will find us there. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code GOODDAY. There it is. And get 10% off all merch. Take care.